Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 447 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here in the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asked you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So I am doing my divisional breakdowns before the NFL season starts. And last episode, I did the NFC East and the NFC South. This episode, I'm going to tackle the NFC North and NFC West. And what's so interesting about, it's the NFC North, because that's where we'll start. The NFC North is a microcosm of 2024. And what I mean by that is, who would have thought that we would be here in 2024? You have, advancements in a bunch of things. We're about to have a new president, possibly. There is just so much happening in 2024 that if you would have looked 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, probably wouldn't have imagined this. Where I want to start with the NFC North is the Chicago Bears. I think this is the perfect team to start with when we're doing this divisional breakdown, because the Chicago Bears are actually, most of these teams that we're going to talk about today are in a new space, an area in which they have not been in for some teams ever, for some teams decades. For the Chicago Bears, this team really hasn't had expectations since like the Dick Butkus days. Now, I'm not here disrespecting the lineage or the history of the Chicago Bears. I know about some of the Chicago Bear greats like a Jay Cutler, like a Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte. I'm not here disrespecting the Chicago Bears, but what I am saying is it's very rare that you go into a season, at least recently, it's very rare that we go into a season talking about the Chicago Bears in a way of excitement, in a way of hope, in a way of this could be one of the most fun teams in football. I can't tell you the last time that has happened. Now, yes, I know that they went to a Super Bowl and everything, but again, I think that was 2005? We're about to be in 2025. But that is the realm that we find ourselves in looking at the Chicago Bears team. It's a new day. And with every season comes new teammates, new teams, new opportunities. And as we know, it's almost like a carousel year after year when we talk about the relationship between teams and quarterbacks. I think Adam Schefter might have said it. On average, there's about 7 or 8 teams that get a new coach or a new quarterback every season, or the start of a season, at the end of a season. So, and the Chicago Bears are a team that is usually on that list. So whether we talk about how many coaches they've had, whether we talk about how many quarterbacks they've had, it's been a tough road for the Chicago Bears and the Chicago Bears fans for a while. But it's interesting watching the Chicago Bears now. Now, I'm not saying watching them as a team, because obviously we haven't seen this iteration of the team yet. But what I'm saying is, this is the first time, I think, in Chicago Bears history, they have a player at the quarterback position that a lot of people consider once in a generation, or in other terms, a generational talent. Caleb Williams has all the makeup, has all the attributes to put him in that class, to put him in that greatness class. He has the intangibles, he has the arm strength, he has the talent. And this with all that expectation, with all that talent, or let me say this, with all that talent, with all that moxie, comes expectations. And that's something that I think that's a new realm. That's a new world for the recent Chicago Bears. The reason why I said that this episode is going to venture a lot into new possibilities is because when you look at this NFC North team or North Division, almost every team is in a new space. Almost every team is viewed differently than they've been viewed for years. A lot of teams for decades. But let's stick with this Chicago Bears team. What I think is interesting is this is probably one of the first times in a while that a newly constructed team with a lot of youth is expected to do a lot. That shows you how good a lot of people think Caleb Williams is. And I'm not going to lie to you, when we talk about talent, this is something I thought I would never say in my lifetime. Or I'll say that this is something that I probably haven't been able to say in the 30 years I've been alive. Maybe 1 or 2 years, but not regularly. This Chicago Bears team is one of the best constructed teams in football. Who would have thought? When we talk about almost every position is stacked. You have DJ Moore at the wide receiver. The wide receiver core, Rome Odunze, who's the rookie, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Carter. It's like at the running back position, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert. On defense, you also have Cole Kmet at the tight end, Gerald Everett at the tight end, Mercedes Lewis. Man. Defense, Montez Sweat, DeMarcus Walker, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Kevin Bird, Byard, I think. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. What I'm saying is, I don't expect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give grace. I'm going to give grace. I am leaving room for positive surprises when I talk about this Bears team. Because it's very rare that you get a rookie to come in and they just set ablaze to the NFL, or they're just amongst the league leaders in everything in the NFL. People forget Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for a minute. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for a minute. Tom Brady sat behind Drew Bledsoe. So when we talk about greatness, it's very rare that you just come in and you're just that guy. Not saying that it hasn't happened, but it's rare. So I think it wouldn't be fair to this Bears team, to Caleb Williams, to come in and put all the expectations that a lot of people are put. There's people that have the Bears winning this division. There's people that have the Bears at least making it to the second round of the playoffs. And while they have the roster to do that, in my opinion, I think that this is one of the best rosters in football. Which is crazy to say about the Chicago Bears. But this is one of the best rosters in all of football. but it's still being led by a quarterback that is indeed a rookie. Yes, albeit the number one overall pick, people say once in a generational talent, has all the makeups of one of them. Rightfully so. But I'm going to hold off expectations because he's still a rookie. And there's a difference between looking incredible, in college, looking incredible in the preseason, compared to doing that against full NFL rosters. I think that, and I think and I hope that Caleb Williams has a long, successful career. But I don't want to put the unheralded expectations. I think that the expectations that I'm putting on the Chicago Bears team is they're going to be better than last year. And they have one of the most talented rosters, and I think that which is a blessing. And that's something that let's stay on that for a second. I do think it's interesting when you look at how Caleb Williams' regime or Caleb Williams' tenured is starting with the Chicago Bears compared to the Justin Fields tenured or the Justin Fields start to the Chicago Bears team. I think that, and I'm not the only one that said this. People have said this in the NFL. The most important years of a NFL player's career, especially a quarterback, is the first 3 to 4 years. I think that a quarterback needs to be able to know their footing in the league in the first 2 to 3 years. And I think with the right help, you're supposed to know how good they can be. The reason why this Justin Fields situation with Pittsburgh is so frustrating to a lot of people is because we're still at that we don't know phase with Justin Fields, even though he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years now? Not saying that he can't blossom to be something incredible, but usually you know what you're getting from a player 3 years in. But I also understand that a lot of that is the environment needs to be right around him. And it most certainly was not the case in Chicago. Whether we talk about, not surrounding Justin Fields with the right pieces. Well, if you look, it's unfortunate that Justin Fields seemingly had to be the mistake. And I'm not calling him a mistake, but what I'm saying is the organization made a lot of mistakes with Jordan or Justin Fields. It looks like they're doing their due diligence and they're learning from their mistakes with Justin Fields pertaining to this Caleb Williams thing. Because one of the biggest critiques and loudest critiques that we heard during the Justin Fields Chicago Bears era is they do not surround him with enough pieces. If you look at this team, there's pieces galore. They have a really good offensive line. Looks like they have great skill positions. Like it is talent galore on this team. I don't know if the Chicago Bears are going to be good. Looking at that roster, they should be good. Let's say that. But it's very hard, even with all the talent that he has, it's very hard banking your hopes on somebody or something or somebody, let's just say, that hasn't gone through what they're about to go through. Because again, there's a difference between college and professionals. And while I don't know how good they're going to be, I'm not going to put an expectation. What I will say is, good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to be one of the most fun and interesting teams this year by far. And I mean that in all the positive ways, which is new for the Chicago Bears, because usually when we talk about interest outside of a few years, it's never really a positive thing. We either talk about the relationship between Brandon Marshall and Jay Cutler, or, front office movements that are less than favorable for their players. This is a new day for the Chicago Bears. And I think Caleb Williams has all the attributes to be an all-time player. I think the Chicago Bears know that. But I think with the Jordan Fields experiment or experience, I think that they know that that can't be enough. They need to surround him with the pieces. And they have done that. I think it's very hard to see this team be last in the division. Especially when you see, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a few, but to see a lot of the movement, a lot of the injuries, a lot of stuff that's happened with this division. But I'm not going to go as far as to say that they're not going to be first, I don't think. I will talk about later who I think first in the division will be, but I think that they'll be interesting, and they have a shot. I'm not going to compare them to the rest of the league, but they have a shot to be at least second, in my opinion, in this division. If everything clicks how it's supposed to click, I'll say that. And this is where I'll end with the Chicago Bears. If everything clicks the way that it's supposed to click, if everything goes as planned, not planned, if everyone reaches the potential that they should, and I'm looking pretty much at Caleb Williams, this team is good enough to win the division. That's how good this roster is. And I think that I don't think they will win the division. But I think that this team is going to be extremely good. Not just because of Caleb Williams, but because this is one of the most stacked rosters in football. Speaking of stacked rosters, and let's move forward. Let's talk about another team that expectations seemingly changed over the last, let's say, 2 years. When we talk about the Green Bay Packers, the perfect example of how we view the Green Bay Packers compared to what we thought we were going to get from the Green Bay Packers are drastically different. If there's not a division in football that proves more that it is a quarterback-driven league. And what I mean by that is you can have the best roster in football. If you don't have the quarterback, in fact, the perfect team, we just talked about this last episode. The perfect team for that is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have had good players. Now, yeah, their defense has been trash, but they've had really good players on the offensive ball for years. They just never had that quarterback to piece it together. When we talk about this Green Bay Packers team, they've had a great roster. I mean, you had Christian Watson's, Romeo Doubs. Like, they have Josh Jacobs now, but they had Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed. This roster, especially offensively, this roster has talent littered throughout it. But the biggest question mark that we had with this Green Bay team is obviously Jordan Love. We talked about this for a while, man. It's very hard to replace or to come after a legend. if you want to put it in different terms, maybe terms that more people understand. Why do you think that usually a legendary act or usually a big name isn't an opener? I'm gonna give you guys a story, and I'm gonna give you guys a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I don't remember when the damn tour. I think it was 2017, 2016, 2017, one of those times. Kendrick Lamar went on tour. The Damn Tour, which obviously was the tour for his album Damn. And on that tour, you had openers. The openers were Drum and Travis Scott. The person that I want to focus on is Travis Scott. The Travis Scott in 2017 is not the Travis Scott of 2024. And while, yes, I still think that Kendrick Lamar is widely considered a better artist or more popular than Travis Scott, you will never see Travis Scott as an opener again. Maybe for a festival, not even for a festival, because if you look at a lot of festivals, Rolling Loud, Coachella, Travis Scott is usually a main act. It would be almost criminal to be someone to come after Travis Scott, because Travis Scott's name is big. Travis Scott is one of the most popular artists in the world. That it just wouldn't be smart to have to come after that. Same thing with sports. When you have a person as large as Aaron Rodgers is to the Green Bay community, to the Green Bay Packers, seeing as though he helped Green Bay get a championship, it's difficult for anyone. Oh, and Aaron Rodgers is widely considered one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. It would be difficult for anyone to replace Aaron Rodgers. And a lot of the things that we saw, a lot of the instances and the glimpses of Jordan Love that we saw wasn't that good. I remember the famous game. I think they zoomed into Jordan Love's parents or something. They were like at the top of, like the literal top of the 49er stadium. Like their back was against the wall. And he looked bad that game. So that has been I'm not going to say critique. That's been the question surrounding the Green Bay Packers. Will Jordan Love, how good is Jordan Love? And is Jordan Love good enough to lead this Green Bay Packers team, which is loaded somewhere? And those answers were answered in droves last year, seeing as though they were a game away from being in the NFC Championship. In fact, if it wasn't for a few things that should have went their way, or if they would have done a few things differently, they probably would have won. So, after what we saw last year, after Jordan Love getting all, the money that he got, the extension that he got, over $200 million, Jordan Love is now the Travis Scott in this scenario. Jordan Love cannot be the opener, no matter how big, no matter how popular. Jordan Love cannot be the opener anymore. Meaning the expectations have drastically changed. We've seen success in a maybe in a realm where you weren't supposed to be as successful. Nobody thought that they were supposed to beat, outside of Green Bay probably, nobody thought they were supposed to beat the Cowboys as bad as they beat them last year in the playoffs, which I think is a main reason why he as in Jordan Love got his contract extension. But like Travis Scott, with a new platform, with new eyes, with new popularity, comes new expectations. The questions now surrounding the Green Bay Packers isn't how good Jordan Love can be, how good will Jordan Love be. The question surrounding the Green Bay Packers is how far can and should they go? How much should we trust this team? Because, like the Chicago Bears, this is one of the most loaded rosters in football. On defense, you have Preston Smith, you have Rashad Gary, Quay Walker, Zaire Alexander, Eric Stokes. Like this roster is nothing to play with. Kenny Clark. You still have man. You still have A.J. Dillon. You still have the speedster Jaden Reed. This roster is good enough to make noise in the playoffs and all of football. Which is why when you hear a lot of people talk about the NFC, when you hear a lot of people talk about the NFC North in particular, a lot of people are really high on this Green Bay team, which is something that maybe 2 or even before last year wasn't the case, because the roster was still good. Don't get me wrong. But the questions were about Jordan Love. Those questions are not. Now the questions are, will Jordan Love live up to this contract, instead of how good can he be? And I think that, I don't know. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but I don't know, because we've seen Jordan Love at his best. At his best, he's a exceptional quarterback. And maybe at his best is what sort of that realm is what he's going to live in. But I've also seen that he's had some bad moments, which all quarterbacks have had. So I think that this year is very important for Jordan Love and for the Green Bay Packers. I know that there's a level of security that he gets, obviously, seeing as though his extension, I think, is 5 years long. But I think that we're going to see the real Jordan Love, and this is a different realm. He is Travis Scott. There's no more. He's not an opening act anymore. He is the main event. He is the main character. You're paying him like the headliner. And with this roster, they should be good. I don't think they have the best roster in the NFC North, let alone NFC. But I think that the NFC is I talked about this last episode. It's the weaker division. It's the weaker conference. I'm sorry. Compared to the AFC. The NFC is wide open in the sense of there's a few teams. Obviously, we talked about the Eagles last episode. This episode, we're going to talk about a couple more. But there's a few teams that obviously have Super Bowl aspirations, or should have realistic Super Bowl aspirations, seeing as though I don't think the road to get to the Super Bowl for an NFC team is going to be as daunting as it will be for an AFC team. Which is why, hence, doing this divisional breakdowns, we started with all NFC teams. Because I think the episodes would be a little more detailed, a little more a little longer when we talk about the AFC, because there's so much to get to. But I say all that to say, the Green Bay Packers should see themselves as one of those teams that are viable for at least a Super Bowl appearance. And like Travis Scott, Jordan Love is not an opener anymore. He has grown with his status growing, so are his expectations. With his bank account growing, so has his expectations. And this roster is a roster good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, just like the Chicago Bears one. But that's the difference between an opener and a headliner. We don't know. We might be touting Caleb Love as a headliner right now, but we don't know because he's never been in this pond. He's never been in this water. We know Jordan Love was an opener for a minute. He's now the headliner. And let's see how popular he really is. Let's see how far he can really take this Green Bay team, a team that is loaded and has high expectations. We'll see. Ooh, speaking of we'll see, man. Man. I don't know what it is, bro. It's been tough sledding for the Minnesota Vikings for the past few years, man. Not even just past few years. Now, obviously, injury bug has hit the Minnesota Vikings hard the last few years. Whether we talk about Kirk Cousins, whether we talk about the running back Jordan Addison, whether we talk about Dalvin Cook when he was there. Injuries have, Justin Jefferson last year. Injuries have hit this team hard. It kind of feels like there's always a proverbial black cat that's walking around the NFL. And it's interesting when you look at some of these teams, man, it's like what team has the black cat visited this year or these few years? And it seems like that black cat has visited the Vikings. And it's not just injuries. It's some decision making, some free agent losses, some key player losses. It's like when they're on the cusp, when they're the Minnesota Vikings are one of those teams that find themselves usually in the same spot year after year, and that is the middle of the pack. I talk about this all the time. The worst place you can be is not the end of the league. Like the Detroit Pistons are not in the worst place. Yes, they were bad. And yes, they probably will be bad this year again. Maybe not as bad, but they were bad. But with being that low comes, I guess, hope moving forward, because you usually have a decent chance or a really good chance to get a high draft pick, which means you're going to get young talent. And with young talent, with high draft picks, gives you opportunity to turn your situation around quicker than other teams. But the worst place you can be in all of football, in all of sports, is the middle of the pack. Because you're not good enough to compete. You're not good enough to find yourself in one of those, championship bubbles. But you're not bad enough to really make a dent in the draft. So you're not getting unless you make some trades or something, you're not getting a future great. You're not getting somebody that can turn the fortunes of an organization around like that. That's not what you're getting in the middle of the pack. You're just an okay team that's going to get an okay pick, and they're going to be okay to watch. They might win a game that they're not supposed to, but they're also going to lose a few games they're not supposed to either. Middle of the pack. And the reason why I started this segment with the black cat situation is because not only are you the middle of the pack, but you continue to get hit with injury after injury. And this year, it has already started with their highest draft pick in J.J. McCarthy. Now, no, J.J. McCarthy is not Caleb Williams. He's not Jaden Daniels. But J.J. McCarthy is the only quarterback out of the three that found themselves in the national championship last year and ultimately won the national championship last year. J.J. McCarthy is also looked at to probably be better right now than Sam Darnold, seeing as though we've seen a long rap sheet of Sam Darnold, and he hasn't been great. But on top of that, as unfortunate as it is, bro, like, I'm looking at this roster. This is a decent roster, man. Aaron Jones at wide receiver, Ty Chandler, not wide receiver, at running back, Ty Chandler. At running back, you have obviously Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best wide receiver in the game. Jordan Addison, he's had a very loud offseason, but, TJ Hawkinson, he did just have surgery, but you also have Robert Tonyan, Christian Darrisaw, the offensive left tackle. On the defense, even though you did give up homie, gosh, why does his name just slip my mind? He just went to the Texans. Forgot his name. But you do have Stephon Gilmore, even though he's getting up there in age. You still have Harrison Smith, Byron Murphy Jr., Shaq Griffin. I didn't know Shaq Griffin was on this team. As good as this roster is, as good as Justin Jefferson is, as good as this wide receiver core, because you can argue when both are on their game, the Vikings have arguably the best 1-2 punch in at the wide receiver position. I think they're on a small list with the Eagles, the Dolphins, those type of teams, because that's how good Jordan Addison can be. With the J.J. McCarthy injury, I think that they're just in the same realm that they've been in, and that is a middle of the pack team. I was one. I'm gonna be honest with y'all, man. I was a staunch Sam Darnold believer. I was a staunch Sam Darnold supporter. I was one of those people that said Sam Darnold, if he was put in the right position, if he was put in the right situation, he would be much better than he was. I thought that Sam Darnold's move from the Jets to Carolina was possible because it was a great opportunity. I just thought Sam Darnold was one of those players that did not get the best opportunity to succeed because of the organization around him. Well, since that take, I have received more data. Sam Darnold has had his experience in Carolina. He's also had his experience in San Francisco. Neither were great. Neither were good, actually. And now he has the starting position on the Vikings. A Vikings team that has a good roster, but they don't have a good offensive line. Outside of maybe Christian Darrisaw, they don't really have, their offensive line ain't the best. So, unfortunately, I think we're going to see more of what we've usually seen from this Vikings team that going into this season, I'm sure after seeing J.J. McCarthy, and I heard really nothing but high hopes for this team with J.J. McCarthy, and now him being out with a torn meniscus, it's going to be tough. And they're going to find themselves in a place that they've been in for years now, and that is the middle of the pack. Oh, boy. DeAndre Hunter. That's another one. That's the defensive guy I was thinking of. DeAndre Hunter left. So it's as much promise as this team had going in. And even with J.J. McCarthy, let's not get it confused. I would still have them last in the division just because I think that, again, going back to new heights, I think that the NFC North is one of the toughest divisions right now. Even fully healthy, I think that it would be interesting to watch, and I think that they'd be good. But I don't think that they'd be the best team in the division. In fact, I'd probably put them last in the division, seeing as the most of the improvements that the other teams have made. But now, I think this also puts them in a weird spot because if you're Detroit, and I know you just paid them an extension, but as much as I talk about the quarterbacks and how important it is to get everything around them right, that's the same thing for the wide receivers. You can be as great of a wide receiver as you are, but if you don't have someone throwing you the ball, the perfect example to that is Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson. There's nobody that questions how good Calvin Johnson is. There's nobody that questions how good Randy Moss is. For a lot of those people, including myself, those are top 5 wide receivers ever. But when you look at their numbers don't equate to how great they were. And most people know that because of they didn't really have. Now, Matthew Stafford was good for Calvin Johnson. Let's not get that twisted. But they didn't have success around them because the team wasn't that good. And Randy Moss's stint, outside of Tom Brady, he never had a good quarterback. And it's no coincidence that Randy Moss had his best seasons with Tom Brady. He was on that 16-0 team. If you're Justin Jefferson, it's like, yo, what are we doing? Now, I get it. Money talks, and money speaks a lot louder than discomfort. And money makes not having a quarterback a lot more tolerable. But I'm like, dog, if I'm Justin Jefferson, and I'm sure Justin Jefferson thing is like, I'm widely considered one of, if not the best wide receiver in the game. I think it's a 2-man race between him and Tyreek Hill. Why am I keep being subject to this? But back to the overall point. Even before J.J. McCarthy, I think that it would be tough. I thought it was going to be tough for this team to rise in the NFC North because of how tough it is. But now, with Sam Darnold at the helm, I'm almost sure that they're going to be the worst. Now, if I'm wrong, I will come in here and say it. I don't mind admitting that I'm wrong. But I think that this team, because of the injury and just because of the history of where they've been, I don't see much of an avenue for success with this team. I think that they're going to dwell where they usually dwelled for a majority of their existence, and that is the middle of the pack. So now to end the NFC North, I'm going to talk about the team that has the most expectation that I don't think is used to having this much expectation, and that is the Detroit Lions. The running joke in the NFL, huge and from NFL fans, has usually been the Detroit Lions Super Bowl is Thanksgiving. Not because, they're just a special team, but because they're never really playing for something. They've never been great. They've had Matthew Stafford. They had Calvin Johnson, who I widely considered one of the greatest, and pretty much everyone widely considers one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. But they've never had anybody, and there's never really been expectation for greatness. It's really a credit to how good, Dan Campbell and his coaching staff has been. Now you see teams trying to perch from Dan Campbell's coaching tree. This team went from having absolutely no expectations year after year after year after year, from being a place that's widely considered a place to die. One of the understandings was you went to Detroit for your career to end because no one's watching you. There's no expectation. Usually the team is bad, so you're not going to excel. People tried their hardest to leave Detroit. I mean, I'm not saying the city, I'm saying the team. When Jared Goff went to this team, it was widely thought that his career was going to die. Whatever career he had at that point, it was going to die in Detroit. That is the aura that was around Detroit. So I think it is fascinating. And I give all the credit to Dan Campbell and all the players that this team went from that for damn near the entirety of their existence. Mind you, they had Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl winner. They had Calvin Johnson. They had, even though he was at the end of his career, they had Adrian Peterson. This team went from the literal laughingstock of the NFL to now having Super Bowl expectations. When we talk about the NFC as a whole, and I've said it throughout this episode, I said it last episode, that there's only a few teams in the NFC that is considered a Super Bowl caliber team, or is considered one of those teams that can be in the position to compete for a Super Bowl at year's end. Detroit is one of them. They have arguably the most loaded roster in football. Jameis Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell at the right tackle, Sam Laporta at the tight end, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs on the defensive side of the ball, Marcus Davenport, Aiden Hutchinson, Carlton Davis. Boy, man. The Detroit Lions find themselves in a position where if they don't at least compete for a Super Bowl, if they don't at least find themselves back in the NFC Championship, then it would be considered a failure of a season, which we have not talked about when talking about the Detroit Lions ever. This is pretty much a kudos, man. And don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be tough because, I mean, we're going to talk about one of the teams obviously a little bit later. The road is not going to be as easy. Obviously, we can't measure injuries unless the injuries have already happened. But the road isn't going to be as tough as we talked about last episode. The Eagles, I think, have gotten much better with Saquon Barkley, with some of the moves that they've made over the offseason. Obviously, you have another team. We have the 49ers we'll talk about later in the show. It's going to be tough. The Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, just teams in their division is going to be tough. But I don't see a team outside of one that maybe two, outside of two teams in the entire NFC. I only see two teams that when the Lions are firing on all cylinders, I think there's only two teams that can compete with them in the NFC. And again, that is a new realm that they're in. And I would say that because there is an acclimation period that comes with new expectations. Like, you have to be acclimated. There's a difference between having a bunch of great expectations and a bunch of bad expectations. There's a difference. There's a different mentality you have to go into it when you have the world expecting you to win and the world not really caring what happens because they don't really expect anything. You have to be acclimated to that. And I think that they did a great job with that last year. Last year, obviously, make it to the NFC Championship. But last year, that's when you thought, okay, this Lions team, because remember, the year before they were okay, they weren't that good. But they were acclimating, they were understanding, okay, Dan Campbell, this is what he wants, this is what he needs, this is his expectations, this is how, we're changing the narrative. We're changing this art, the painting that we've been painting for years. We're changing that. Last year, I think, was the year, okay, this is what it feels like to be amongst those top teams. This is what it feels like to be good. This is what it feels like to have winning aspirations. This is what it feels like to have high expectations, not just for ourselves, but people having expectations for us. This is what it feels like. Okay, let's get it. I think the acclimation period was last year. I think it's over with. And I don't mean over with as I don't think they're going to be good. I think it's over with as, okay, we know it. We know what winning feels like. We know what high expectations feel like. We know what defeat feels like. I am one of those people that think that they blew the NFC Championship more than the 49ers won it. I give all the credit in the world to the 49ers. They overcame a huge deficit, but a lot of it was because of the Lions' poor decision-making in key situations of the game. That just is what it is. And that game was a perfect example of what happens when a team snatches momentum. It's almost when you're going against a good team that has momentum on their side. I understand that people that probably don't play sports or people that don't regularly understand sports like that may just think like it's a foreign thing or momentum doesn't matter. That's not true. There's a reason why in basketball, when you're on a 5-0, 6-0 run, the coach calls a timeout. Like, hold up. We need to stop this, because they know how, if you put momentum on a team side, you know how a 5-0 run can turn into a 15-20-0 run quick. The the Detroit Lions, they gave up the momentum. They had a double-digit lead going into the, I think, third quarter. and blew it in a span of like 3 minutes. But I say all that to say, this team has gone through the cycle that it needs to go through to get to this point, and that is the expectation now for the Detroit Lions is honestly at least a Super Bowl appearance. And as crazy as it is to say, seeing as though I've never been able to say this in my 30 years of life, I think it's Super Bowl, at least Super Bowl appearance or bust for the Detroit Lions. And they have the roster to do it. In fact, it would probably be a upset if we at least look at the NFC Championship and the Detroit Lions aren't in it. So we'll see. But I do think that this team is going to be great. That has been the NFC North. If I were to rank where I think the NFC North was going to, like, the teams, I have Detroit number 1. I'm going to say Packers number 2, just because Jordan Love is a little more experienced than Caleb Williams. I'm going to have Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears at 3, even though I do think they have a better overall roster than the Green Bay Packers. I think that's going to be really close. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Chicago Bears finish second in the division. I'd be a little shocked if they finish first because of how good Detroit is, but I'll have Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, and because of injuries and because of just losing a bunch of players, I think that the Vikings are going to be last in that division. So let's go over to the NFC East. No, I'm sorry, NFC West. Let's first talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I will first say that this has probably been a historically competitive division. Whether we talk about the Rams that had Kurt Warner, you talk about the Arizona Cardinals that had Kurt Warner, Seahawks, they have a recent championship, and the 49ers obviously are the 49ers. This has been usually the most competitive, one of the most competitive divisions in all of football in recent memory, obviously. But gone are those days. Gone are those days where I think this division. Don't get me wrong. There's good teams. There's decent teams. Like, we'll talk about the Rams. We'll talk about what I see from the Seahawks, but and obviously the 49ers. But this Arizona Cardinals team is not good. It hasn't been good for a minute. Now, yes, you have Kyler Murray. Yes, you have arguably the best wide receiver coming out of this year's draft in Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, you have James Conner, who had a really good year last year. That's it. Oh, I mean, Trey McBride's okay. He's pretty good at the tight end position, but yeah, man, this is gonna be tough, bro. I'm looking, like, you can look at this roster, and outside of the names that I've already, that's the aforementioned names. Oh, Buda Baker's good, obviously, at the safety position, but they don't have much. And I'm trying to formulate how I can. I, I, mm. This is the. The how do I say this? The age-old question. I talked about this last episode. The question is, what is more difficult to win, a Super Bowl or an NBA championship? And I said that it's the Super Bowl because there's so much that has to go right. And a lot of things that have to go right are not in your control. This is kind of what happens where you've hitched your ride to, you know what this is? This is what a team looks like when you're hoping that your quarterback can take you further than they're supposed to go, but you don't have the pieces to help them. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, is going to be an exceptional wide receiver in this league. I think he has all the intangibles of being one of the best wide receivers in this league moving forward. And I think Trey McBride has an incredible upside at the tight end position. But they've hitched their ride to Kyler Murray. And I think Kyler Murray is an exceptional quarterback. But I also think that Kyler Murray is not. I don't think. Kyler Murray's good. I don't think he's good enough to take this team out of obscurity. That's the thing with football, man. I don't know. And Patrick Mahomes is arguably the GOAT. I don't think that Patrick Mahomes can take this team out of obscurity. I think that this team is going to live as a bottom feeder for a while until something drastic happens. And I don't know what that drastic is because they do not have a good roster, in my opinion. They have one of the worst rosters in football, in my opinion. Now, they have a good quarterback. Kyler Murray, I think, is good. They have like one or two or three good pieces, but they don't have a good team. And JJ Watt ain't walking through this door, bro. This team's not good. I don't even have to spend much time on this. I think that the connection with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison is going to be electric. I think that's going to be very fun with James Conner at the running back position. He had one of the better seasons last year. And I think that you have a hidden gem in Trey McBride, but that's about it. I mean, Zay Jones is okay. Zay Jones is cool. Zach Pascal is okay, but he's even bounced around in the league. I don't see much. I don't see much positives for this team. Honestly, outside of the names I mentioned, Sean Murphy Blunting is okay too. They don't really have much. This team is I don't think this team's going to be good. I think it's going to be fun to watch because of the connection with Murray and Harrison Jr. But They, in my opinion, this team, especially roster wise, is worse than the Minnesota Vikings. In the Minnesota Vikings have an okay roster. They just have Sam Darnold as their quarterback, and they keep getting hurt. But this Cardinals team, yikes. Um, let's talk about the LA Rams now. The same exact characteristics, not the same exact, but a lot of the characteristics I see out of a team in the NBA is the same characteristics that I'm seeing from this LA Rams team. Let me paint a picture for you. You have a team that has experienced some highs, championship highs. Yet, year after year after year, they're getting older. They have some very young, nice pieces, but their core talent is older. There has been some franchise-altering departures. And this team is still trying to hold on to their greatness that we saw in recent past. But you kind of know they're not good enough to compete at the highest level. That sounds like the Golden State Warriors, doesn't it? In fact, that is the Golden State Warriors. You have Steph Curry, you have Draymond Green, you saw a legendary piece depart in Klay Thompson. You have very young pieces that are promising. Brandon Pozinski, Jonathan Kuminga. They're still an okay team. They're still a good team, but they're not good enough to compete, in my opinion, for a championship, especially when you see all the teams around the league that are getting younger, getting faster, and getting better. Yet, the Golden State Warriors, who still have an exceptional talent in Steph Curry, are still trying to hold on to the recent success. Wait, that doesn't also sound like the LA Rams? You have an aging star in Matthew Stafford. Cooper Kupp is getting up there in age. You have really solid young pieces like a Puka Nacua, like a Kyron Williams, like a Blake Corum. You saw the legendary piece depart in Aaron Donald to this time to retirement. You're trying to bring in older pieces, maybe damaged pieces like Tre'Davious White. I'm not throwing away the Rams because I think, kind of like the Golden State Warriors, I think they're too good to be bad. When you have an all-time player, when you have a future Hall of Famer, you're not going to be bad. When you let me refresh. When you have a future Hall of Famer and you have recent years of success, I don't think you're going to be bad per se. But when we talk about teams that are fighting for a championship spot, I think that Matthew Stafford is good. I think that this team has a chance to be good. But when I put them up against, the Detroit Lions, when I put them up against the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't see a team that is close. I think Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. I think that Kyron Williams and Blake Corum are going to be exceptional at the running back position. And I still believe in Matthew Stafford, even though this is yet another year where he comes into the season unhealthy. You also have Jimmy Garoppolo. I did not know Jimmy Garoppolo was on this team. You have Tutu Atwell. You have Demarcus Robinson. There are good pieces. But I don't think this is a good team. This isn't a championship caliber team, in my opinion. Matthew Stafford, I don't think he is, obviously he's not the prime Matthew Stafford. I don't think Steph Curry is the prime Steph Curry. But I think that they're still top 10 players in their respective leagues. I still think Cooper Kupp is obviously he dealt with injury last year. I still think he's an exceptional wide receiver. Puka Nacua is an exceptional wide receiver. I think he broke the rookie reception feat for wide receivers. I think Kyron Williams is an exceptional running back. But I don't think this team is good enough to realistically say that they're a championship caliber team. Especially when you see teams around them, one in their division, a couple in the NFC, getting better or be as stacked or loaded as it is. I don't see it. But I do think that that's kind of that's where the Golden State Warriors are. I don't see the Golden State Warriors, unless they make a move for maybe like a Lauri Markkanen or something. I don't see the Golden State Warriors competing for a championship. The only reason there's a sliver of hope is because you have an all-time player in Steph Curry. Matthew Stafford is an all-time quarterback. And we've seen recent success from both teams. But this roster spells age. And it doesn't spell, honestly, I don't think this is a championship caliber roster. I think that people will say the Rams because obviously Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, but I don't see it at all, actually. Will they be good? Yes. I think Golden State's going to be good this year as well. Will this team make the playoffs? Probably. I think that the Rams are good enough to make the playoffs, barring any injuries. But I can't. When you put their roster up against anyone else, the only reason that you would say that they have a shot is because we know what Matthew Stafford has done. So, the Rams, nah. And honestly, this can be fast too. I don't. As crazy as it sounds, I think that the Seahawks have a better roster than the Rams. DK Metcalf, Tomlinson, Noah Fant, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith Nabaji, Kenneth Walker III, Jaron Reed, Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. I think the 49ers, not the 49ers, I think the Seattle Seahawks have a better roster than the LA Rams. I think that the best player, obviously, is Matthew Stafford, and probably, like when we talk about, if we did like the 10 best players out of both rosters, I think that the Rams would have the first three, in Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and possibly Cooper Kupp. But outside of that, the rest is the Seahawks. But kind of like the Minnesota Vikings, I don't know. I don't think this team is going to be that good because of their quarterback, Geno Smith. I think Geno Smith is a okay quarterback. I think you can kind of, at his best, you can kind of put Geno Smith in the same camp in the same ranking tier as, say, a Kirk Cousins. I think when Geno Smith is playing at his best, he's a really good quarterback. But kind of like Kirk Cousins, I think we've seen the ceiling for Geno Smith. I think, 2 years ago, we saw the ceiling for Geno Smith. And that ceiling is good. Really good quarterback. Maybe tier B, maybe no, tier C, tier B or C. But that tier isn't a championship caliber tier. And I think that this team is good. But I think the only thing holding this team back, obviously, is the quarterback. Because, again, when you have a wide receiver core of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who is getting older in age, but he's not really showing it, seeing as though he's usually one of the most dependable people, and Jackson Smith-Nabaji, you also have Kenneth Walker III at the running back position. That is a roster. That is a skills group for you. Yet, you have Geno Smith and Sam Howell at the quarterback position, and I don't see much there. We don't have Pete Carroll anymore, so I think that was something that helped. Pete Carroll, I think, is an exceptional quarterback, but obviously things just didn't work out between him and the front office. So you have good pieces. Woolen, you have Witherspoon at the defensive side of the ball. You have Byron Murphy II, Jaron Reed. Like, you have Leonard Williams on this team I forgot about. You have good pieces. But this team is the perfect example of you're only as good as your quarterback. If Geno Smith plays anywhere close to his average, this team's not going to be that good. I'll be real with you. If he plays exceptional, like the Geno Smith, the best Geno Smith that we've seen, I think that they'll be really good. Don't think that it's a championship caliber team, though. Roster-wise, they have a championship caliber roster, in my opinion. And I think that there's still question marks about the offensive line, but you have Geno Smith as your quarterback. And yeah, I think it's gonna be tough, especially when you go against a stout defensive team. So, but I think that the Seahawks are good enough to be a very good team. In fact, they have the roster, in my opinion, to be the second best team in this division. I said second best team, and where we will end is the 49ers. You know how we say the same talking points apply to the Saints year after year after year after year? And nearly year after year after year after year, they don't reach that height that they should have reached. I think the same can start to be said about this 49ers team. What can we say about this team that hasn't been said over the past few years? Is this arguably the best roster in all of football? Yes. Do they have the best chance or one of the best chances in the NFC to compete for a Super Bowl? Yes. Do they have talent littered throughout this team, both on the offense and defense? Yes. I think there's a difference this year, though, for the 49ers. There's obviously a difference because you still have one of your top, if not your top wide receiver, and Brandon Ayuk holding out. You still have your best lineman, future Hall of Famer Trent Williams, holding out. Now, I'm hearing a bunch of reports saying, "Oh, the deal is close. The deal is almost done. They're about to bring. Brandon Ayuk's about to get. He's at practice. Look, a deal ain't done until it's done. So I don't want to keep hearing it's almost happening. Like, what does that do for me? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, where is he going?" The conversation in the Discord around this team has changed, seemingly. Everything that I just said still applies. They're still one of the best teams. They still have arguably the best roster. But now you have people debating if the championship window was closed. And a lot of people are saying yes. Because a team that has Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, who just got paid, by the way, shouts out to you, Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuels, Kyle Juszczyk, Fred Warner, DeAndre Campbell, Tre'Davious Ward, Nick Bosa, that roster. A team that has those players, Jerron Hargrave, Leonard Floyd, that team continues to be amongst the top teams in football. Yet, they have not won it all. I don't remember last time they won it all. And now you have holdouts all over the place. To the point where your best offensive lineman in Trent Williams is not even, his name's not even on the depth chart. Yes, Christian McCaffrey is arguably the best running back in the league. Yes, George Kittle is one of the best, if not, or probably the second best tight end in the league. Yes, Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk are arguably the best 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position. You know what it is, too? People are starting to really look at Brock Purdy. And people are really starting to question, all right, Brock, hold up now. Are you great? Are you one of them? Because trust and believe, obviously not every team in the league, neither NFC or AFC, not many teams in the league is strutting out this amount of talent year after year. Yet you haven't been able to get it done. I think people are starting to now question Kyle Shanahan. Like, hold on, Kyle? Kyle Shanahan was, I think, the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons that blew the 28-3. Okay, well, he wasn't the coach. He wasn't. Oh, well, he also blew a lead in every Super Bowl he's been in. Okay. There's no question that this team is the best, has the best roster in football. In football. In fact, this team had the best roster in football last year. And I don't. You didn't have an unhappy Brandon Ayuk. You didn't have an unhappy Trent Williams. And you still couldn't. You had a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl, I think, going into the fourth quarter, and you lost. Just like you had a double-digit lead in the Super Bowl a few years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo against the Chiefs. You lost. I'm not going to hold them for not making it to the Super Bowl against the Eagles 2 years ago, because their entire quarterback room fell victim to injury in one game. But people are, I think the question is like, how many times, how long can you have the names that you have be considered one of the best rosters year after year after year? How many times can that happen and you still not win a Super Bowl? How many times can you be looked at as the favorite at that point? And obviously, I think for a lot of people, that time has come. So now people are saying, I think the window's closed, or at least rapidly closing. And I will say this: if you don't have Brandon Ayuk on this team, I don't care. I mean, yes, you still have the roster still loaded. If you do not have Brandon Ayuk on this team, that championship window is damn near gone. I think when you talk about the NFC West, it is the 49ers up top, just because I can't, even though we've seen what this roster has done over the last few years as far as the postseason, being so close and never getting there, kind of like the Boston Celtics, outside of last year. But I think the 49ers are the clear-cut best team in the NFC West. I think just purely roster construction-wise, I think the Seahawks are number 2. The Rams are good. They're just, at some point, age is going to catch up. And I have the Arizona Cardinals. I think Arizona has one of the worst rosters in football. I could be wrong, but yeah. That has been my breakdown of the NFC North and NFC West. I did the NFC East and NFC South last episode, so go check that out. Obviously, next episode, we're going to start with the AFC. And yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. It's definitely been fun. Tell me who you think is going to come out the NFC. Tell me who you think out of the NFC North and NFC West, which team you think is going to be the best team. Let me know. Leave it in the comments. And that's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve, or joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate everyone. If you like the content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Also, if you listen to the DSPs, whether that's SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, Spotify, please follow, please subscribe to wherever you listen. I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate everyone that supports me. It definitely means a lot, and I could not do this without you guys. So wherever you get your DSPs, please follow. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily there. That's where you get my longer reels. That's where, you can leave in the comments and we can go back and forth. That's probably the quickest way to get to me, whether that's debating, telling me how much you love my takes, how much you hate my takes. Whatever you got, leave it there and we can go back. Just keep it respectful, and I don't mind going back and forth. I appreciate you guys, and until next time, much love.